Welcome to Karuna Live. It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2024. My name is Miriam Hall, and I'm here to offer a program around surviving holidays. Which already, when we were giving a title to this program, the initial title was like the complexity of celebrating. We were like, no, we need something that's a little stronger. And so I said, well, how about surviving holidays? And the entire staff at Karuna Training was like, yep, that's what we need, surviving holidays. And I live on what was traditional Ho-Chunk land and is still a place where quite a few Ho-Chunk people live. I'm a settler here, and the colonial name is Madison, Wisconsin. So that's our land acknowledgement, because that's where I am, even though Karuna and the instructors are in many different places. We are going to focus in the program on what's been given the title Truth's Giving, which is a name that I could not find, despite my research, the evidence of the original kind of person who said it. But Native folks have called what we call American Thanksgiving all kinds of things for many years, many decades, including a National Day of Mourning. So today is Wednesday, November 15th. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving in the US. And I'm inspired, even though this is not just about Thanksgiving. In fact, it's not just, as I said in the promotion, about Thanksgiving or Christmas or Gregorian New Year. Diwali just ended. We have so many, there are so many different things that are celebrated around this time and not at this time. But I wanted to mention that because Truth's Giving, the idea of calling Thanksgiving Truth's Giving, really helps remind us of the incredible complex truths that are a part of celebrating anything, especially holidays, especially dates like Veterans Day or religious holidays, observances like Diwali or Yom Kippur, or cultural holidays, things that just come that way on the calendar. New Year's Day, but that's different in the US than it is in Tibet, for instance. So all of these are dates that show up on our calendars, and some of us may kind of just look through them and go, oh, okay, that's not really meaningful for me. Truth, yeah, beautiful. So the question, am I saying truth giving or truce giving? Truce. I'm saying truth, Truth, but I love that, truce giving too, Truce. And really, when it comes to the topic of surviving holidays, for me, the key part is being with the truth of that day, being with the truth for ourselves. What are our true experiences on that day? Being with the truth of our family history, right? That our family may have a history around how we celebrate or don't celebrate or observe particular holidays. And then being around our national history, our cultural history around these days. So Truth's Giving, the giving of truth on Thanksgiving, is to talk more about the cultural context, right, of this holiday that in the US is often talked about as being the Pilgrims and the Natives got along so well and everybody was happy and ate pumpkin pie, right? And so, well, that's not the truth. We need to honor something much more complex. But I wanted to take inspiration from that, because I think that Truth's Giving, right, telling the truth about our experience, is helpful on all these levels. To talk about it culturally, like, yes, maybe Thanksgiving for you is a day of gratitude, and it also could be a day where you mourn the colonial and genocidal beginnings of the United States or Canada, if you're honoring it in Canada. And it may be a day, like for me and our family, Thanksgiving when I was growing up was a really big holiday. And it was also always so loaded. There was always a sense on every holiday that my family observed that there was a lot of pressure to have a perfect day where everybody got along really well. When my in-laws, my dad's mom didn't like my mom, that kind of a thing, right? So there was always this pressure. So that was my family's history. And then I have my own history of having been orphaned when I was 19 and trying as an adult to make these holidays and celebrations continuous with my childhood experience, which wasn't possible. So these are these three layers, right? The cultural or national layer, the familial layer, and then our own personal layer. And I'm referring to Thanksgiving because of the Truthsgiving, but this is true for every holiday. If you have stuff, if you have history with it, then it's there, right? I think the reason why truth can be so powerful, something that we really notice. So contemplative psychology, Karuna Training is contemplative psychology. And contemplative psychology, being based in Dharma teachings, Buddhist teachings, really looks at what's the source of suffering. There are many sources of suffering, but what are some of the root causes of suffering? And one way to talk about the root cause of suffering is denial. That we suffer because we don't accept or acknowledge the truth, the way that things are. For my part, I prefer to use the word acknowledge than accept. Accept to me sounds like I'm condoning, right? So if I accept that that's, for instance, the colonial history of the US, then that feels to me like I'm condoning. But acknowledging helps me to say, yes, I don't deny that this is true. It's there. And I want to build a different world. But there's a grounding quality to acknowledgement, to acknowledging the truth, which could be many truths, right? I'm talking about this as if there's one truth. But the one truth is that truth is very complex, right? So your siblings, if you have them, or other family members have different versions of what's happened in holidays in your family over the decades. So there's also that, the truths giving of truths, not just one, but all of the complex truths. Acknowledging that for, again, the larger scale, our national or cultural context, our family, and for ourselves. When I wrote a blog post, an article about this, I was reflecting how my spouse, who's non-binary, and I have chosen to opt out of the major holidays in the culture of both of our families, which is mainly kind of Midwestern white culture. So 4th of July, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. We were both raised in atheist agnostic families that observe kind of the pan-Christian-ish holidays. But my spouse also converted to Judaism, and so has sometimes spent time with, and I've spent time with them on Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah. But we have opted out of doing those formally with others because A, we both feel that that's a better experience for us. And B, we just found that trying to make these holidays into a positive experience caused more damage than good for us. So I want to acknowledge that. I'm not suggesting it. If you can and you want to, that's its own thing. But I wanted to acknowledge that. And what we did was we said to our families, we'll get together with you just at a different time. At a time when there's not this kind of cultural pressure and media pressure and all this other energy and history at play. And that's worked out pretty well for us. And I feel really grateful for that the family situation and systems allow for that without too much resentment or weirdness. So of course, that's one possibility, right? We acknowledge it and then we say, I'm going to opt out. But for most of us, that's not what it looks like. It looks more like acknowledging our personal or national or familial history. We might be one of the people in the family who always tells the truth, right? Who comes into the holiday and says, I want to talk about what happened a few years ago on this holiday. Or I want to just point out the colonial or, war history of this thing that we're doing on 4th of July, Independence Day. I want to talk about this, right? And we're the sort of bugaboo, right, in the family situation who bring in the thing that nobody else wants to talk about. We just want to eat together and be together. So sometimes the truths giving might look like that, where we actually confront the sort of front that can come up around the holidays. But sometimes it might just be acknowledging for yourself. You know that you can't do that in your family system, or you don't feel up for it. And so just to acknowledge inside of yourself the complexity of what's happening, being able to be with your own experience and acknowledge it can do a lot. So what we're going to focus on practice-wise is giving ourselves some space to acknowledge that complexity, whether it's, again, in our culture, in our family, in ourselves, but giving ourselves a chance to explore that together and in our interior, and have a chance to share about it if you want to, so that we can honor that. We can learn to, or I'm sure for most of you, actually continue to practice holding the both and. The I want to be with folks and celebrate at this time, and ouch, this is hard for whatever reason, or this challenges me for whatever reason. And then if you want to be able to talk about, right, this is something I'm seeing more and more posted in social media recently, is how to have difficult conversations with your family at the holiday table. Right? So in anticipation, again, overall culture, anticipating that folks are going into Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, how to have conversations about some of the things that are happening in the world, which include multiple genocides, right? So how to name those truths too. Do you take that up with your family or not? Regardless of whether you do, being able to be with that complexity inside of yourself grounds you so that you're able to acknowledge and be with it in a spacious and grounded way. Say one last thing and then we'll practice. One of my teachers, he's not a teacher in Karuna Training, but someone who I bring a lot in to things I work on in Karuna Training, is someone named Resmaa Menakem. I put his name in the chat. Resmaa, Resmaa, Menakem, Menakem. He wrote the book My Grandmother's Hands. He's had some other things since then, but that's the book that most folks know. And one of the things that I've really learned from Resmaa over the years is, he says, nibble, don't gorge, which I think is apt when we're talking about family holiday meals, right? When we're working with something that has gone unacknowledged, whether that's in our culture, in our family, or even in ourselves, something that's gone unacknowledged, if it feels big, meaning triggering, activating, wow, I haven't even really thought about this, it's good to take small bites, because truths like that are hard to digest, which is why we often deny them, because they feel overwhelming, right? So I really want to, they can feel really overwhelming. I want to encourage you to nibble, not gorge. So whether that, again, is a cultural truth, or whether it's a family truth or truths, or something personal, as we do this practice, if something really big comes up, I'll just keep encouraging you to ground, be where you are, and just take a little taste. Hi, I see you. Wow. Okay. You need some attention. We don't have a ton of time. We're online with some other people, but we're not in person. I acknowledge you. I'm going to practice with you, and I promise I'll come back later, right? Instead of like, all right, baby, let's take on the whole thing. Are any of you like, all right, baby, take on the whole thing kind of person? Because I usually am. Okay, well, I'm glad that not everybody's a gorger. I need the instruction to nibble. I tend to take it all on. The practice we're going to do is a pretty classic practice in Karuna Training. And Karuna Training, which I didn't say up front as much context, is, again, this contemplative psychology set of teachings and trainings and programs. We offer these live and introductory programs a few times a month, and then we have an ongoing training program that happens usually over the course of years. And a lot of these teachings came out of Naropa University, so the Buddhist university in Boulder, Colorado, that was founded by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And a lot of the teachings are tied to the Tibetan Buddhist understanding that emotions fundamentally are energy underneath. So it's energy that's in motion. Sometimes I think of it that way. Emotion is energy in motion. And because they're in motion, they change constantly. They're not static, just like everything else is changing constantly. So are our states of mind and feeling. That doesn't mean they don't matter, but they're not permanent. And if we can be with them as they arise and really witness them and feel and taste their energy and texture and honor that, then we can actually have some real understanding and see a deep level of truth that we don't see when we get caught in the storyline. So an example of this would be that my chest is starting to well up. That's not happening right now, but I'm just giving an example. My chest is welling up. My tears are welling up in my eyes. My throat is tightening. When this happens, it's usually because I'm sad. I'm sad because of something someone said to me. Now I'm going to go into a state of sadness. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's powerful to spend some time with just the sensation that's coming up, just the energy of it. Watch as it arises and see what wisdom it might have for us. And then also let it go. When it changes, when it ends, and it turns into something else, to let it go. So learning to surf or ride this emotional energy can help ground us, can help us be with what's really happening now without getting caught in story, without getting caught in arguments with ourselves or others, and can help us taste and let go of some of whatever we're working with. And that this practice is called the 4-step practice. So some of you may have heard of it before. My colleague Sandra Ladley started calling it the FEEL practice, FEEL, which I like because it's really a practice where we basically allow ourselves to feel in a different way than we normally do. And then that's an acronym for the 4 steps. So the first step, I'll just say what they are first, and then we'll slow down and do a guided practice. The first step is to find. So as I've been talking, you've probably had waves of, oh, this memory and that cousin and that, Hanukkah from 6 years ago, that Eid that I attended, things like this going back and forth in your head, right? Emotions, energies, thoughts. And so as those are arising, often we'll have some kind of sensation in our body, or just the thought itself has an energy, right? You may not be able to go inside of your body and feel sensations around it, but is the thought coming up quickly and then disappearing quickly? Or is it coming up really slowly and then suddenly kind of really hot, like a bunch of hornets, right? So these experiences, how is the thought? How is the emotion arising? What are you noticing in your experience? So that's the finding, just finding that. And then the second step is to explore, which is to feel into, I like to really focus on the felt sense. Sometimes it's metaphorical. Like if I say sharp, maybe I don't actually feel something jabbing me that's sharp, but it's like, oh, this came on really fast. And it just feels like somebody just, brought a sword right up and it has a sharpness to it. Is it a loud thought, right? Is it a thought that just really is taking over everything else? Does it keep repeating, right? So these are kind of sensorial qualities. Some people feel these things in their actual body. Some people would just say, oh, if this were a sound, what would it sound like? If I were seeing an animal, for instance, that this were, what would it look like? So that's the explore stage. Then the embrace stage, so the second E, embrace, taking a moment to really, this is a self-compassion moment, right? Oh, sweetheart, I feel you. I hear you. I acknowledge you. These parts of ourselves, our experience, our cultures, our families that we would rather push away. Can we take just a moment to embrace and pull close and hold and say, I'm with you. And then the last step is to let go. So as much as we embrace, we also don't stay there forever. Right? You'll say, like, now I'm moving into this grief, or now this anger and I are like besties, roommates. No, we're saying you arose, you came, I'm experiencing you, and now you're leaving, you're changing. You're part of my experience, but you're not all of me. And this practice at first might feel a little like, well, first of all, it can be hard to do it guided because you're like, but my emotions aren't moving at the same pace as Miriam's guidance. So I want to just acknowledge that. And maybe things don't come quite in those stages for you. But what it can help us do is actually follow the natural arc of our experience, the energy of our emotions, by spending some time underneath the stories that we start telling about who I'm angry at and why, and here's the context, and just staying at the energy level. What I've found is it doesn't necessarily make the emotion go away. We're not trying to make it go away, but it helps me ground in what my actual experience is and help me figure out, what do I need to do next? Do I need to confront somebody? Do I need to say, you know what? I'm coming for dinner, but I'm not going to stay for dessert. Right? Do we need to go for a walk? So it really helps me get clearer about the care. You know, I know I brought up what's happening in the Middle East, but I need to change the topic, or I can't have this conversation with you. Right? So just helping us to actually check in, what do I need, and set boundaries from a grounded place. Does that make sense? So that's how it can kind of help us deal with the truth with other people. First with ourselves, the truth of what's happening now, and then what we need to do with others. So let's practice. There's nothing that has to happen in this practice, by the way. If you snooze, it's all good. If you're like, get spaced out and you go somewhere else, it's all good. Just be curious. As Melissa Moore likes to say, the director of Karuna Training likes to say, it's all just information. It's just information, neutral information. So take a moment to actually you've been probably looking, most of you have been looking at the computer, looking at me, listening to me. So just reorient in your space. It can help reground you gently, slowly. Give a turn. Maybe look at or feel a few objects. I'm in this Zoom room with these other people, but I'm also in my space. Then finding a position that is supportive and comfortable for you, but also alert enough that you won't automatically put yourself to sleep. Once I said, if you take a mini nap, that's fine. And you're welcome to turn off your camera if you prefer. When I bring up this, and again, you may have already encountered this, but if I bring up this question, what's a truth or some truths around holidays? I feel like they need acknowledgement. Again, maybe they've already come up for you as I've been giving this talk. Asking yourself, maybe start with one. What's a truth that needs acknowledgement? On the cultural level, my family level, my personal level, just one. Take a moment to see what comes up as that thought or idea or emotion arises. Do you feel any particular sensation in your body? Are you hearing anything in the room? Suddenly the noises got louder. And I want to name too that going blank. So now that I'm asking you this question, you've got nothing or feeling numb are also experiences. So if you're like, I'm encountering a big bunch of nothing, let's go with a nothing. So we're finding. And if you've got a few things going on, maybe you started feeling a pain in your hip and in your knee, just pick one for now. And we'll transition into exploring, getting more curious about the details, tuning into your five senses, as long as they're functional for you. So sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Is there a texture, roughness, smooth, color, speed, sense of pressure or rhythm? And again, if it's blank and numb, then just stay with that. Is the numbness cool or is it warm? Is the blankness white or is it black? If it feels like you're making it up, make it up. Be curious about some of these textural, sensorial qualities. We'll spend just a couple more minutes in the explore. If you're finding that you're getting lost, you're spacing out, or it feels like too much, if your eyes are closed, open them gently. Just leave them partly open. Maybe hold an object in the space and feel that object with your hand. If it just feels like too much or overall, you're like, I can't do this. It's okay. Then just step out. Open your eyes all the way. Maybe get up and move your body. You'll have the recording later. You can come back. Otherwise, just a couple more minutes to explore, be curious about what's arising. Then transitioning to an embrace. Sometimes I tell people, if you're coming into contact with a truth that has been ignored for a while, maybe all you can do is make eye contact with this experience. Maybe there's a lot of pain there. And all you can do is just make eye contact and say, I see you. But if you can bring this experience even closer and embrace, shake hands, hold yourself in the experience, and you're welcome to do that physically if you'd like to. It's a sense of hugging yourself or holding this part of yourself. I see and hear you. I don't necessarily understand. I don't need to understand. I can just witness you and be with you and know that you're my experience. And then letting go. So if your eyes have been closed, gently reopening them. If you're hugging yourself, gently loosening up that touch. Let yourself come out slowly. If you've been focused on one part of your body, notice the rest of your body. Been focused on one sense or one image, take a look around, use your other senses. Just feel into the wholeness of your experience, which includes this truth and lots of other things as well. And again, if looking around your space slowly, Gives you a sense of orienting and grounding or touching a few objects. I always keep a worry stone that was a gift from a student, a really beautiful worry stone that I can rub that with my thumb, especially when I'm on a Zoom call. That kind of literally grounds me, right? Brings me back. And also take a peek at your screen. You're here with these other people. You were just inside, probably. Maybe you're in another place with other people, but now you're here back with these people. And so take a peek, reorient here too. So just dedicating the benefit of our practice to everyone who's watching the recording or listening, and then the world beyond in ways that we probably don't even know. We don't need to understand. May our practice be of benefit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be well. Appreciated being with you. Take care.